Nothing is happening. Oh, it says the stream is live.
Oh yeah. Oh heck. Accessibility ain't just for those with disabilities. Makes the world better for everyone, online as well as in person. It can also make the world more difficult, more challenging for everyone, which is why I do this podcast. It ain't just about me. So hey, this is the Accessibility Advantage, where I will be advocating for more accessibility and inclusion for people with disabilities by emphasizing the many positive benefits of embracing inclusion. You can find me at theaccessibilityadvantage.com. That's where you can find the podcast. Now, today is another episode sponsored by the good people over at AudioEye. They will help you solve for digital accessibility. They provide automation plus human teams of people that will check your current and future versions of your website and fix any problems you may have. They also provide legal support that you can count on, and they offer a free website checker at audioeye.com, and that's audioeye.com. So today I'm very blessed to have a wonderfully patient, optimistic, just generally happy woman with me because I need it today. And her name is Leanne Reuber. She had to teach me how to say her name because us Texans have trouble with English, much less, words based in Canada. And Leanne has over 20 years experience working with people with disabilities, over 6 years as a yoga instructor. She transitioned during COVID to offering things online, and she's combined her two passions to create the only fully accessible fitness app on the market, which is now available on both Apple and Android, or iOS and Android, if that's how y'all say it. She wants this not only to be a fitness app, but to be a place that brings people of all abilities together as they take care of their personal health and well-being. And you can find her at secondskinsociety.com. Second is spelled Sekond. So, Leanne, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and for being such a wonderful guest, even though you haven't even opened your mouth yet.
Thank you so much for having me. What a warm welcome. It's nice to be here.
Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you for helping me work through the accessibility challenges created by somebody at StreamYard trying to earn their check this week.
Just another example of the work that is to be done, right?
Exactly. And another example of why somebody like you, a woman, because in general, businesses owned by women have much harder time succeeding. Somebody who believes in accessibility and universal design, somebody who's doing it right. You don't have a huge budget. You don't have a huge team. Yet you're doing something a lot of the larger, more established, wealthier companies either can't do, aren't doing very well. So let's start first with, where does this attitude about including people with disabilities come from? I understand it's part of your background as you were growing up, and I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. Oh goodness, there's so many aspects of it. I'll start with saying, as I age, as I go through the privilege of aging, I am only more and more aware of how accessibility impacts me and my body. But when I was 13 years old, I started really looking for a job. I was either going to babysit or I was going to find a job. And I grew up in a very small town area, so not very many places that you could find a job, and even fewer with for someone who's 13 with nothing on their resume. But I happened to walk into an organization who was at that exact time looking for something really specific, a very specific type of social support for one individual. And it turned into a much, much bigger opportunity. But those years when I was starting to support this individual who had some developmental disabilities, I was going to high school and then going and spending time with people who had a completely different lived experience than I did. And through that opportunity, I also was spending time with people with physical disabilities, with mental health challenges, and really the intersectionalities of all of those. And again, just getting to spend time with people who were having a different human experience than I was. And I was learning about them, learning about the things that they loved and the things that they didn't, and the goals that they had and the dreams that they had. And it turned into this over 20-year career where I was really, I look at it as trying to help people achieve those goals and those dreams, in whatever capacity that I could. But I look back on that time, particularly when I was in high school and I was going to school and then going and spending time getting to know these people. It really shaped me. It really changed the way that I was thinking about human beings. And I was really aware of us all having our own human experience. And we all have our own unique human experience. So, when I was starting my business and it pivoted through the pandemic, and I was receiving feedback that people were saying, hey, we love that you have both standing and seated class options. It really brought me back to that understanding that we all have our own human experience, and how could we create something that was a mainstream fitness app that was really intentionally designed to be accessible and include all bodies and all minds. We certainly have a long way to go, but we've made a really great start, and I'm super proud of what we've accomplished so far.
Right. So before we go on to my next question, I just want to point out a few things to my audience here. One, she took an opportunity to work with one individual, and that opportunity turned into a career. Two, she's come to understand that people as we age have the same challenges as people that are considered, quote, disabled, unquote. And she's also shown us how seeing people as human beings, being exposed to people with disabilities, can break down barriers. So these are things that I hope y'all will keep in mind as you go out throughout your daily lives, because I honestly believe if more people had at least one person with a disability or some sort of physical challenge in their lives, the exposure would break down a lot of the problems we have with accessibility and inclusion. So I'd love for you to talk about how you felt when COVID hit and the business you had was no longer the business you thought you were wanting and dreaming for, and how you transitioned from that into an inclusive fitness app.
Yeah. Being an entrepreneur, it's just full of ups and downs, regardless of what industry, regardless of, what you're working to do. But I think for me, I really was focused on all the things that I could do instead of being focused on the things that I couldn't. So at the time, running an in-person studio was not an option, but creating content and having it available for people virtually was an option. And so I just really quickly moved in that direction. I was figuring out a lot of things. So, I certainly didn't have it all mapped out, but I did know of some companies in the area that had been offering their employees a gym membership or yoga studio membership that was part of their employee wellness benefits. And again, understanding that that was not an option available for them at that time during COVID, I had reached out and said, well, hey, we have something virtual, it's just starting out, but maybe here's an opportunity where you can support your employees through this time with a benefit that's going to help them, mind, body, spirit. And everyone, of course, at that time really needed it. So I did get the opportunity to work with a few organizations and kind of expand our virtual membership. And that's when I started to realize that we were getting so much feedback from people who shared many times that they loved that we had both standing and seated class options. So really it was the focus on all the things that I could do instead of being completely caught up in the fact that I could not do this thing. I could not run this studio. I could not have this in-person space, and being open and willing to have it look different and to listen and learn.
Right. So for people who are listening to this, they don't understand that basically about 3 years ago, you built an app from the ground up with no real training or skills in the area of building an app. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So how do you do something like that? And how do you include this accessible approach where from the beginning you're building in accessibility, which I'll be honest is not an easy thing to do, especially when you're building apps. So how did you manage all of that, and what can you tell people who are saying that they can't do it or there's no need for them to do
Mm. Oh, that second question is loaded. I can't wait. Um,
it?
the first was okay. I had this feedback, and I immediately knew that the business, the entire trajectory of the business, was going to be focused on accessibility and inclusion. And I want to point out that you said something when I shared about, having this early exposure, and that if we had just one person in our life with a disability, how much it would change as far as the assumptions that society as a whole has around disability. When I got this feedback that people love standing and seated class options, I thought, okay, I could do so much better. I could really think holistically about accessibility and inclusion. And I mean inclusion. So what I knew I didn't want to create was something that was accessible for people with disabilities, but segregating. Because I did see that in the market. I did see people that were creating spaces for people with very specific disabilities, meaning it's a community for wheelchair users and there are instructors who use wheelchairs. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's absolutely needed. But I didn't see a space where people with and without disabilities and people with different disabilities were coming together and really, bonding on the things that we have in common. And I did think about that early exposure that I had, and I did think about that profound opportunity to create a space where people with and without disabilities are together, so that it was a natural way for non-disabled people to have those assumptions that they have of disability challenged simply by a non-disabled person taking a fitness class instructed by someone with a disability. It immediately shifts that assumption of what does disability mean? What do people with disabilities, love? What do they not love? What can they do? What can they not do? It's just another human experience that I wanted to provide more of that exposure for other people. So,
Right. Now, I love what you said there, and it's a very important point because I actually downloaded a yoga for the blind at one point. I wasn't able to use it, but I did download it because it was available. And one of the things that I'm really impressed with what you're doing is this app. For those of y'all who haven't had a chance to try it out yet, and there's a 7-day free trial that you can get when you find it in your app store or the Play Store, is a person with a disability and an able-bodied person can take the exact same workout in two different locations at the same time and feel as if they are working out together in a gym and working together to help each other stay accountable in their fitness.
absolutely. Yeah. So when I get started kind of moving in this direction, the very first thing that I did was I was looking at what was in the market, but I was also having conversations. So because I had over 20 years of experience in this world of disability inclusion, I went directly to those people that I had in my network and I started asking questions, and I started really, digging into what people were doing or what they had tried in the past and what didn't feel good, what wasn't supportive. And I heard so many different stories from people who had shared about personal trainers who had, made these promises that they could create adaptive programming only to basically feel like their money was stolen. I heard stories from, couples who had a really established fitness routine together, and one of the individuals had an accident, had a spinal cord injury, became a wheelchair user, and all of a sudden that routine no longer existed because they couldn't find something that they could do together. And so they ended up individually having their own, fitness schedule or fitness programming. I
And
heard,
they lost that time that they were spending together that was probably very healthy for their marriage.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I heard from many people who are blind or have low vision sharing about experiences where they either couldn't participate fully in the class because the instructor wasn't teaching with a level of detail that they could feel confident executing the movements, or that they would have someone in their social circle that was with them, that was providing that extra detail. So there was no independence or autonomy in them, being able to have a routine for themselves and feel confident in that. And there was also a huge level of fear of being in person in a class where everyone else might be doing the exercise, and being able to see the instructor and knowing that they're doing the exercise that the instructor is doing, and this individual being blind, not knowing, am I doing what the instructor is teaching the class to do, and do I feel isolated because I'm unsure and I might be doing something completely different. So a lot of just different experiences that I was learning, and through truly hundreds of conversations. I had over 100 people that did some surveys for me. I did a lot of market research and had some different student opportunities helped to dig into that market research. It was through all of that combined that I came up with the idea for the app. And then at that point, it was like, okay, you mentioned it. I'm not a technical founder. I can't write the code for this myself. I have no team. I have no money. In fact, I had debt from opening the yoga studio and not able to continue on with that. And so it was very much, I don't know how to do this, but I know that I will. And one by one, I was able to find and meet people completely unexpectedly who just said to me, I love what you're doing. I love the idea. I've never heard anybody wanting to approach accessibility and fitness and yoga in this way, and I would like to be part of it. And I said, great, I would love for you to be part of it, but I have no money. I can't pay you. And they decided that, the mission and the impact was important enough. And we came up with some, creative solutions around compensation. And I ended up attracting people who could write code and who did know product development and who also had a background in universal design and even some occupational therapy in sports and fitness. And our team just kind of started to form from one or two people who then brought in one or two people, and we got started on building. So what I would say to people who say that they can't do it or don't have a budget for it or don't need to do it, number one, you're missing out on a huge business opportunity if you think you don't need to do it. But number two, there is absolutely no reason that you could ever share with me why you can't do it, because I did it with will. I did it with willpower, with not really understanding how hard it was going to be. Thankfully, how hard it was.
I sit here and I feel like we are, what is that expression? You're my sister from another mother or something, because I'm sitting here, you're talking about how you let people see the importance of the mission to you, and they offered to help. I call that, or actually other people call that interdependence. I just talk about it a lot, which is asking for help or accepting when offered, deciding to find creative solutions. You did things that I've done throughout my career, and I've also attracted many people over the years who did things for free or for less than what they usually charged, or in exchange for me doing something nice for them. So as I'm sitting here listening, I'm thinking, we're doing an accessibility podcast, but she's dropping some motivational stuff on y'all. So it's good that you were able to figure it out. And it sounds to me like even if you hadn't gotten this help, you would have figured it out, even if you had to work through the process of creating an app on your own.
Yeah.
Pretty much, one tutorial at a time, for lack of a better expression.
Oh goodness. If that's what it took, that's what it would have taken. And I absolutely would have done that, because I knew at that point where I had fleshed out the idea, I had all these conversations, I had learned so much, and I knew where the biggest gap was and where we could create the biggest impact. When I had all that, it was just a matter of when, not if. When I would figure out the way, not if I would figure out the way. And, I think when you have that type of determination and also stubbornness, when you really, really know, this was life purpose work for me. It was a joy to figure it out. Yes, it was extremely challenging. It took way longer than I ever expected. We came just against so many barriers through the process, and we still face all kinds of different barriers and things that we want to continue to develop and create. But when I hear about businesses saying that they don't have a budget for it, well, I didn't have a budget for it, but here we are. It's an excuse that's no longer valid. I think it used to be kind of accepted that, oh, okay, yeah, maybe they don't have a budget for it. No, what you do when you don't have a budget is you plan, you learn, you get as much information as you possibly can. You understand what the costs are actually going to be. You get the quotes, you get the contractors who tell you this is how long it's going to take, this is how much it's going to cost, and then you put it into your budget for next year. And you make progress, and you share the plans with your clients or with your team members or with whoever it is, so that people know that you're moving in that direction. Even if it's going to take you a long time, you make the decision, you stay committed to it, and then you follow through. So did I want this to take me 2 full years to build out and actually release? Absolutely not. I wanted it to take 6 months. But it took how long it took. And at the end of the day, we are in both app stores with people who are sharing really overwhelmingly positive feedback on the concept. Many things that we want to continue to improve and to build out. But the intention was, could we create a space where people understood what we were looking to do and how we were looking to do it? And, the response has been, yes, this is needed, this is wanted, and it's going to be big.
Right. I wish I had some stock in y'all, but that's a whole nother subject. So as I'm hearing you talk about your determination, it reminds me of back in the day when me and my family operated a small traveling carnival here in Texas. And a lot of weeks we just barely made it from one town to the next. And quite often people would ask my dad, they would go, Max, how did y'all manage to do that? How did you overcome a broken axle, or how did two of you guys lift something that should have taken 4? And he would always just stand there and he'd look at him and he'd grin and he'd say, what, did we have a choice?
Yeah.
And what did we have a choice has stuck with me. And it's what I was thinking of when you were talking about this. The other thing that came out to me is something that we talk about in accessibility, but we need to talk about it a lot more. And that is that accessibility is not a perfection or a destination. It's a process and a progress. And you have shown a great example of that. And so I'm going to ask you about some of your challenges. But first, I need to remind people that this episode is being sponsored by AudioEye.com. They will provide you solutions to address digital accessibility within your business. They do it through a combination of automation and real human beings who represent a variety of people with disabilities. They can help you prevent mistakes and fix mistakes on your website, make sure that you're accessible, meeting the WCAG guidelines. And you can also know that they will stand with you if and when you need help with legal issues regarding accessibility. And they offer a free website checker at audioeye.com. That's audioeye.com. And I love that I'm getting to talk with Leanne Reuber from Second Skin Society, which is secondskinsociety.com, but it's SEKOND. And we're talking about universal design in her fitness business. And really, I feel like I'm speaking with a trailblazer, a thought leader, somebody who's, is going to be on Shark Tank someday, maybe. I don't know. I just really feel like I'm in the presence of somebody really special when I talk to you.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you. That's very kind. I appreciate that.
So now that I've said that, let's talk about some of your challenges, because, unlike a lot of people, you're not happy just being accessible, just being a lot better than other things that are out there. You actually have some things you want to get solved in the area of instructors and affiliates and some other things to make this thing even more helpful to people with disabilities and to their able-bodied friends and family who also want to work out or stay healthy with them.
Absolutely. If I could share one of the biggest challenges for, I think, us all as a team, but certainly me as, I think about the vision of the business. Disability is so vast, right? I mean, we are all so unique. We are all having our own human experience. And so when you set out to create something that's really meant to include, you can get caught up in how vast that that vision really is and needs to be in order for it to include everybody. And so that, in itself is a challenge of just coming back into the granular. What can we do today? What can we solve for today? And how can we continue to create a space where we're consistently looking at, who's in our community and who's not yet in our community? How can we create a space for them to really know that we're thinking of them and that they're included here too? There's all kinds of technical challenges that have come up along the way. Even at the end when we felt like we were at the finish line and our development team, we had taken on the challenge of wanting to release this in both app stores. And, not until after we actually were able to successfully do that did I speak with other people who said, ooh, that's really hard. Usually we pick one version of the app, usually iOS, and then we'll work on Android, but we were trying to do both at the same time. And things were happening where we would get something fixed in iOS and it would break in Android. And we had this back and forth of, really kind of fixing code in different ways back and forth before we finally came up with the code that was going to work across the board and getting it over the finish line in both stores. So lots of technical challenges. But I think, as a team, it's very much about, we knew that we were taking on a big project with just the concept. In fact, I was actually advised more than once not to do what I was doing. Choose one segment, one target segment and really niche down and do really, really well with that segment. And in business, that's so important. It really is important to focus on, one of my advisors said, you want to build a car, but start with a skateboard and then move to the scooter. And then you can continue to build on until you get to the car. But for me, there was no other way for us to get actual proof of concept without doing it the way that we were doing it. The concept itself is something that many different people with different bodies can access the same thing. And in fact, people can access the same thing in different ways at the same time. And so you had mentioned, this space where people with and without disabilities can exercise together, or for this couple that I spoke with who had an accident and their routine was broken, not having found a place for them to be able to work out together. We have a video player that allows you to stream 2 different class versions at the same time. So we offer classes that are standing, that are seated, that don't include any lower body mobility, that are seated, that do include some lower body movement, and classes taught with American Sign Language. And so if you were this couple where, one person could take a full body or a standing class version, and the partner who uses a wheelchair could take a seated class version, you'd be able to stream those 2 classes at the same time so they could both participate together. And in theory, that seems like, wow, that's great. But it also doesn't seem that complicated. However, if you actually think about not just the technology of being able to do that, but how our instructors are creating those different class options so that as they are streaming at the same time, it feels like people are participating in the exact same class, and it gives this live experience even though everything is pre-recorded. There's a lot of thought and detail and planning that goes into how those classes are created, which instructors are creating the different versions, how they're able to sync up the timing so that one instructor isn't 3 exercises ahead of the other when they're streaming side by side. The level of detail that the entire team really got into, thinking about the technology and thinking about the instructor community and how we would create the content. It's very complex, and we put it together in a package that we hope users find very simple. That's probably the biggest challenge.
Right. And it's going to be an ongoing challenge because it's something that is going to be difficult to maintain as you scale. But I'm sure y'all are up to that challenge. As I was listening to you describe it, it almost sounded to me like a 2-dimensional virtual reality approach to this thing.
That's interesting. Interesting to think about, because we also have had thoughts of virtual reality and being able to integrate some of those things. Now, I will tell you that early on in my days as creating a virtual wellness platform, right when we were shifting through the pandemic, I had all kinds of ideas that I thought were brilliant. I executed on those ideas and then came to find that people said, actually, what we really like is over here. So no longer do I create without real validation from our members to tell us what's most impactful and what's most important. So all of those, ideas, do we integrate VR? Do we build out this list of features that we have going? Everything that we do comes from our members who are telling us what's impactful and why. And we're really in a process right now of co-designing what we do next with our members.
Right. So again, she's dropping knowledge outside of accessibility, because this whole idea of niching down, that's something businesses do, but then also deciding whether or not something is good for your business, being able to say no to certain things. And also when it comes to your business, finding out what people want before you spend a lot of time and money building it. And so for those people who are listening right now, if you've never left a comment, a rating, or a review on one of my podcasts before, please let me know what y'all think about the idea of this podcast on accessibility. I feel like it's very important. I feel like it's very helpful. I feel like that as we educate more people about the need for accessibility, how it's a process, not a perfection, and also how we understand it is a difficult challenge to take on, I feel like the more education will break down some barriers, and we will have more accessible content on the internet and on our devices. But like I say, if you're listening, leave a comment, a rating, or a review, and let me know if you think we're headed in the right direction with the accessibility advantage. Sorry to break in on you there, but it just occurred to me, and you know me well enough to know that by now, that if stuff like that occurs to me, I'm probably just going to say it,
Yeah, as you should.
So I read one of your recent emails, and it sounds like y'all have solved or are getting close to solving the inaccessibility of training instructors and getting new people certified to be part of your platform who have disabilities.
We are working on it. Very, very early stage, because of course, one of the founder problems is having so many ideas that you want to execute on, and really needing to focus and doing things really, really well. But the reason that we're starting to work on an accessible certification process is because it's also helping us for, mitigating our business risks. So the fact is, because the fitness industry has been so exclusionary, specifically of people with disabilities, the lack of access is only one of the barriers. There is also a lack of leadership. And one of the, profoundly impactful aspects of what we've done is hired instructors with disabilities. So 75% of our instructor community has lived experience with disability themselves. And we know that there is so much more room for more people with disabilities to lead in this space. And so one of those barriers for that to happen is the actual certification process being inaccessible. So we're just barely starting to kind of do some of our own research, talking with our own instructors, really looking at what certification processes are out there, and working towards building an accessible certification process so more people with disabilities don't just have access in this industry, but they're leading the industry. And then one of the things that I'm so excited about with this is, hopefully, of course, we're going to have more of these new instructors who have just gone through that certification process to come and be part of our team. That would be one of our goals. But also, regardless of what the instructors end up doing with their certification, maybe they build their own community, maybe they're working, for other companies, maybe they are working for us. The innovation that will happen in the fitness industry, in the yoga industry, in the kind of movement industry in general, the innovation that will happen because more people with disabilities are leading, I am so excited to see what comes, because people with disabilities are incredibly adaptable. So they're just so used to coming up with different ways of doing things. And our entire approach to movement has been incredibly inspiring, creative, and innovative. And to know that the industry can move in this accessible and inclusionary direction where people with disabilities are leading, it makes me so excited to see what those industries will end up looking like in 10 years from now.
Right, that's true. The more people there are working in the industry as instructors, the more people will be exposed to people with disabilities doing those jobs, and the more people who will have their ideas about people with disabilities will be changed, including what people think of those who are aging or have chronic illness. Yep. That may not consider themselves disabled, but have many of the same challenges. So seeing those people out there will definitely be helpful. And also seeing people like you and some of your instructors presenting at some of the national conferences would also be really cool to see that happen.
Definitely.
Yeah. Now, there was one other thing I had in my notes to ask you about, and that was we talked before about y'all searching for an accessible affiliate option. And at the time, I suggested Gumroad, but I hadn't used it in a while. And the reason this matters to y'all, for y'all, is if she wants to make sure that people who are part of this platform, this society, this community, that the people who are helping her build it, that they benefit as well. Am I correct on that?
Absolutely. Definitely. I mean, it's an affiliate opportunity is great for instructors, for even members, if we decided we wanted to build, that opportunity out. For anybody that really, wants to kind of represent us, we want them to feel like they get to do that and be rewarded for it. And I haven't been able to find an accessible affiliate program that I would feel comfortable putting into place, knowing that we have several instructors and many members who use assistive technology. So from a business perspective, every time we integrate new tools into the business, or every time we're using a different system or a different process, the very first consideration is it accessible? Whether that team member specifically is using assistive technology to be navigating it, we know that we want to continue to attract more talent onto our team as we grow and scale. And we want to hopefully attract more talent who have lived experience with disability, and that this is a really, personal mission for them. And so in order to do that, we want to make sure everything that we're implementing is accessible to the greatest extent that we can. And so there have been many, many tools that we have not yet integrated simply because we have not found one that's accessible. There's just so much work to do in accessibility.
Well, I try to stay positive, but just today, I had a new challenge with StreamYard that I hadn't had in my previous live recordings. And this is a challenge for not only business owners in general, like yourself, who doesn't have a disability that I know of.
No.
and people who are disabled or differently abled who are trying to start and run their own businesses. Is there are so many apps out there that claim to do stuff for us, and they probably would be great to do stuff for us if they were built to be accessible from the ground up, Second Skin is.
Hmm.
The other problem I run into with apps is sometimes when I find one and it works like it's been advertised to work, and I get used to using it, then somebody with deep pockets comes along and buys it out and puts it out of business or changes it where it's no longer recognizable from what I've been using. So I
Well,
totally understand your frustration with finding accessible apps, and I really respect your dedication to look for them and to refuse to use tools that aren't accessible. I really have to congratulate you for that.
oh, well, I mean, I appreciate it. It certainly, it definitely creates a challenge. I think it also creates great opportunity for people who want to work in this space and innovate in this space. There's so much room for more to be done. Obviously, when it comes to the things that we're implementing and looking for the most accessible solution, sometimes those don't exist and we need the tool. So we do the best that we can to support our team in using things, or creating our own systems or processes so that the support is there. But I mean, really, the more you get into this space, the more you recognize that the world has barely scratched the surface when it comes to accessible products and services. And I'm excited to see, because I have gotten to know some other founders that are working in this space and I understand some of the things that they're working on. I'm excited to see the direction that we're moving because more and more people are becoming aware of the need for accessibility, whether because of other people they have in their network or because they too are coming into contact with disability themselves in a personal way, or they just recognize that they will in the future. I tell people all the time, I've built this for me today. Though I don't categorize myself as having a disability, my body has frequently changing needs. I have lost a pretty significant amount of hearing in the last few years, and that is hereditary. And so some of the features that we have in the app give me a much better user experience. But also I built it for me, the me of tomorrow, the me of 30 years from now, if I get that far and the needs that I'll have then, or the me of later on today, if I'm driving and I have an accident and I acquire a disability from that. This is an everyday life experience for many, many, many people. And we will all come to encounter disability in some form at some point in our lives. Why would we wait until that happens for us to care and for us to do something about it?
Wow, that's a great place to end. I really wish I could just end, but I got a couple of people I need to shout out at this point. They're not sponsors, but they're really cool people. So Missy Sue Mastel, we talked about differently abled and how people will be disabled at some point in their lives. Thank you, because that subject is coming around again. And Alex Sanfilippo, who runs Podmatch, which is where we connected to start with. He's what they call a heart-centered or customer-focused entrepreneur. And I find that one of the benefits we had over the last few years is not only did people in the workforce decide that their well-being, their quality of life was important to them to the point of quitting. We have many new or relatively new entrepreneurs who have decided that focusing on the customer means more to them than focusing on the balance sheet, the dollar signs, or the amount of money they can sell their company for. So just a couple of things that mentioned there. And Alex is another guy. He's got 3 people on his team. They're doing a great job with accessibility. So I really appreciate what you're saying about how we have really just scratched the surface. Depending on who you ask, they say it's between 3 to 5% of the internet is completely accessible. I have days where I think that number is woefully wrong. And I really would like to get to the point where I no longer start out every new app or website for my business with an email to their customer service people, tell them, look, I don't expect to have problems, but I'm a blind guy using a screen reader. So if I do, y'all will have advance notice that I'm here, you know. So I do appreciate you coming on the podcast. You've shared a lot of great knowledge about accessibility, the importance of building it in from the ground up, of making it the focus of the products and services you're offering, because it's not just good for people with disabilities or people who identify as disabled. It's good for those people who, as you said, throughout the course of their lives, are going to have times or are going to transition to where they have the same challenges as somebody who is, quote, disabled, unquote. I really appreciate that. So I would love for you to share one final thought about people who say that accessibility is not needed, or I want you to motivate their butts here for me a little bit.
Ah, um, well, let me just tell you from an impact perspective, I have been messages immediately from people when they're downloading the app and sharing things like, I'm aware there's an image on your login page and the image was described, and I just want you to know that that's not a typical experience for me. Or people will say, I was able to navigate the app with absolutely no issue using the assistive technology that I use. Or, wow, this is the first place that I've ever seen myself represented in this way, and how powerful that is. Or just understanding the intention that's gone into this, the emotional impact that people have shared because of how we have created this has been every bit of motivation that we as a very small, very scrappy team need to be able to keep going. And so from a good human perspective, there is where the need lies. If you want to talk about from a business perspective and a business opportunity, this is the largest minority group in the world. It is the only community that absolutely everyone will become part of at some point in their lives. I said it before, I'll say it again. Why would you wait for it to impact you in order for you to care, in order for you to take action? And action doesn't have to mean that you plan out the entire project and that you get it done tomorrow. Action means first making a decision, making a commitment, understanding that this is a process. It will always be a process. There will not be an end point. The sooner you can embrace the fact that there will never be a time where you're done, the better. So make the commitment, make the decision, and then start talking. Start talking to people who have the lived experience with disability, who can share about, your products, your services from their perspective, in what things that you might be able to do, maybe even for free, maybe even tomorrow, that can just in a very small way impact them positively, and start to work towards those things. Yes, there will be things that will take budget. Yes, there will be things that take time, months, maybe years, for you to actually be able to, get to the end point with whatever project that is. Come back to that decision and that commitment that you've made. Plan for it to be part of your budget every quarter of every year. And the return that you will gain, not just from that emotional impact and from knowing that you are including people, which is absolutely the right thing to do, but from the business perspective of reaching the over 1 billion people globally who have a disability and their social circles, who make purchasing decisions based on, is this good for me? And is it good for my family? Is it good for my loved ones? I'll buy it because it is, even if there's another product that maybe could be comparable. I'm going to make that purchasing decision because I believe in this. It impacts me. From a business perspective, you will have that ROI. So it's not about, this all or nothing mentality. It's about making a dedicated decision, a commitment, and coming back to that commitment over and over and over again.
I could not have said it better than that, and I really appreciate how you brought it home, made it clear why it's in everyone's best interest, and how it is going to be a continual process. So, ladies and gentlemen, I've been speaking with Leanne Reuber from Second Skin Society, and that's at secondskinsociety.com, and second is SEKOND. You can find her app on both the Android Play Store and the Apple App Store. That she has taken her 20 years experience in fitness and 6 years in working with people with disabilities and 6 years in yoga, and her just plucky can-do spirit, and designed the only fitness app out there that is completely accessible, but that at the same time brings able-bodied and disabled people together. So secondskinsociety.com. I really hope y'all will check it out. I've recently started using it myself, and I'm impressed with the level of accessibility. I do have to mention AudioEye one more time, mainly because I feel like I really just feel like it's the right thing to do. So AudioEye.com, that's audio EYE, they can help you solve your digital accessibility issues. They offer a program that has a combination of automation and real world humans that can test your existing site, help you fix errors, help you make sure that you're in compliance with the WCAG web content accessibility guidelines. They will also supply you with legal protection that you can depend on should you ever need it. And they offer a free website scan at audioeye.com. That's audioeye.com. And then I'm your humble host here, Max Ivy, the blind blogger. I appreciate you tuning in with us. I hope that the hiccups from the live broadcast haven't diminished y'all's enjoyment of what has been one of my best interviews in my 7 years of podcasting. I do hope y'all will check out my website, theaccessibilityadvantage.com, for more podcasts and other content from me about accessibility. I also hope that you will visit my other website, theblindblogger.net, and find out more about how I became the expert that I am today. Until next time, like I say, I do hope you will join us again the next time we sit down to have a conversation like this. Until then, please do what you can and take care of yourself out there. And now I'm going to do my outro. Disabled people, we should tell our friends and share to our social sites. Don't think about how hard it is. Just focus on those dollar signs, 'cause accessibility ain't just for those with disabilities. Makes the world better for everyone, online as well as in person.
Item chooser menu, 153 item, 86, StreamYard, Studio, StreamYard, style, StreamYard, Starcom, show on state, solo layout, show comment closing, item chooser menu, skip to item chooser menu, 153 items, 101 item end stream, button, end the stream, and outro video, set heading level 4, end up, broadcast aside content comments, item chooser menu, 4 items end stream, button, end stream. End of banner. End stream button. Loading. End stream button. End the stream and outro video. Heading level. End of. End of. Post a comment. Edit text. End the stream and not yet button.